got the leather all set up, and while I was setting it up, I had a thought that I forgot to mention. When you're talking leather selection, I've made holsters out of leather boots, old wore-out leather boots that had leather uppers. We were talking about stiffnesses and what type of leather to use, but this here is what I'm making this one out of is a 10-ounce vegetable tan tooling leather, and it's nice and stiff. It makes a beautiful holster. But you go and buy this, last time I bought it, it's like $16 a square foot, and you got to buy like a side to get it for that price. Now the whole holster, now that I have the holster all cut out, it's not very big, and we only need 2 pieces of that. Well, it might be hard to find a suitable piece of leather, so bear in mind, don't overlook your scrap leather, because one of the things that you can do, like when I make my lined holsters, this is 2 thin pieces, and even though these are stiff, you take a contact cement, and when you laminate them together, it's like plywood. The more plies that you put together, the stiffer it gets, and the glue in itself adds a stiffness when you laminate them together. So don't overlook old work boots or cowboy boots or old women's purses, or you throw away an old couch that's got a leather on it. I salvage all my leather. A lot of the bags that I make are actually salvaged leather off from couches. They're already worn and distressed looking, and it just really brings a really appealing look. They're lined anyway, so it just, don't overlook them other sources. Anyway, now that we've got this leather up here on the table, you got to bear in mind on your pattern that you're going to have a left and a right. You've got to remember to flip your pattern. Otherwise, you'll have your suede side in on one side and out on the other, and you don't want that. I normally mark my patterns on my suede side. It's not really a big deal if you mark it on the smooth side, and you'll see why when we get further down the line and you see the tools that I use. And I'll have to probably show you how to make some tools just to avoid specialty tools, but they're simple to make. So we're going to use a right and a left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make one side right now and draw it around on the suede side, and once I'm not going to worry about my belt loops right now, because I can lay my pattern back up on here at a later time and locate them, because I'm going to have to locate my sew lines anyway. I'm just using this for a cut pattern, and the belt loops will not be cut until after the holster's already sewed together all the way around the outside. So just sketch it out. You can use an ink pen. I don't prefer a Sharpie. It's too wide, and then which side of the line do you cut on? So I use an ink pen and draw it out here, and then I'll show you what we do for the other side, because it's going to get laminated. Now that I have my outline, I actually prefer to use a knife. This is one I picked up at a flea market, and it's really got a pretty big angle on the tip. This is the sharp side, and this works well for me. It's what I like, but I have a backer board under it. Normally we'd be doing this in a workshop, but here in Florida we're having a little bit of our liquid sunshine right now, and it's a little wet getting out there, so we're going to do it in here on the kitchen table. But normally this would be done in the shop, and I wouldn't worry about a backer board, but I do have one here to protect your table. But I just take it, and I got this pretty sharp, and I'm cutting probably 3/4 of the way through with this knife, and I'm not even pushing really that hard, but I can make good bends with it. I can get good straight lines with it. You can try scissors if you like. I don't really like using scissors. Scissors are hard to turn corners, and they really kind of get in the way. So you're not trying to really cut all the way through on your first pass. I will finish this with scissors sometimes. I'll show you 2 different methods that I use here. You're just trying to get it most of the way through. And this is actually faster than scissors. You try and cut 10-ounce leather with a pair of scissors, you really need a really nice heavy-duty pair of scissors. It's pretty stout and hard. Okay, that didn't take too long to cut that. Now, one thing that you can do is I've cut most of the way already with that. You can get you a good spot where you're through, cut into it, and now I can stand my blade up and I can just walk it right around there and cut it out. And that's one way. Sometimes, and it depends on the leather that I'm working with, sometimes I will, because this is wanting to really follow that groove that I cut real well, or you can do the same thing with your scissors and try and get in there, but I still prefer the blade. And you can cut it from the top or the bottom either way. Just try and hold it open when you cut, and she'll cut real well. She pretty much wants to really follow that line that I've already cut in there. Now, you bear in mind, you're not after a finished factory looking cut right here right now, and if it's a little bit rough looking, it's okay. We'll show you how we're going to fix that later. If I would have been cutting that with scissors, I'd have been 15 minutes and my hand would be hurting. Now, off video, before we actually laid this pattern on here, I actually went ahead and made sure that my backside was good. I didn't have no brands. It's funny, I made a bag one time and I didn't realize it. I cut it from the backside. When I got all done, I had like a JB brand right in the middle of it where they branded the cow. So anyhow, I now have one side. This is on my line, but I have to flip it now because I want a left and a right. So now I'll come up and find an area where I can get that. Now when I draw this one, I want this one a little bit big. I'm actually tilting my pin to make this one a little bit bigger. I don't want it an exact size. I want this bottom one to be a little bit bigger because we're going to glue these together, and if you mess up a little bit on your alignment, it's really hard to get it apart with that contact cement. So this line is just a little bit bigger than that, and I'll actually I'll cut that on the outside of the line. I'm not going to have you all watch me do that, but I'm going to go ahead and cut that out, and then when I come back, I'll show you how to locate your other lines because we're going to glue it. Maybe by then the Florida sunshine will let up and we can go out and work in the shop where I got a little bit better working space. And so I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, rain finally quit. Was able to get moved out here to the shop. It's a little humid, so I got the AC on. I hope that background noise isn't too bad. I've got both pieces cut. I told you I took the first one that I cut to shape. The next one I actually cut slightly oversized, and you'll see why in a minute here. I took my pattern and I cut my pattern on my sew lines because these are the lines that's going to get sewed. And I needed to do that because what I'm going to do now is we're going to laminate these two pieces together. So I'm just going to lay that up there, and I'm only drawing it on the suede side. I don't want to draw it on the smooth side. The suede will not be visible. And all I'm doing is I'm just after a reference line. A close reference is all that I need. And that's going to just give me an indication of where I want to put my contact cement. When we were talking about leather earlier, I kept referring to 10 ounce, 5 ounce. To give you a reference, because I talked about using an old pair of boots even to make a holster. And like I said, the laminating of it with the contact cement will stiffen it, but you might be wondering how thick is 10 ounce, how thick is 5 ounce. So just for a reference sake, so if you've got some scrap leather that you're trying to determine how suitable it may be, and these don't have to be 10 ounce, that's just what I like. I like a very stiff holster because with a vegetable tan, when you form it to the gun, it really gives it a good definition, holds really well, and I don't need a loop or a retaining strap on it. If you had a softer holster, you would need to add that. So your 10 ounce leather is roughly 125 thousandths, which is 1/8 of an inch. 5 ounce leather is roughly 1/16 of an inch, which is 62 thousandths. You take a pair of good quality work boots that you've wore out the soles on, or whatnot and have good leather uppers, you're still going to be a little less than a 1/16 of an inch. You'll be less than 5 ounce. You'll probably be down around 3 ounce. It's going to be a little bit on the thinner side, but when you laminate it, you can probably still make it stiff enough if you put a retaining strap on it. But I just wanted to give you a reference on the leather thickness. So now we've got our reference lines on there. We're using contact cement. Any good contact cement will work. Your big box stores, they all sell it. That's where this one came from. You really want to do it in a well-ventilated area. It will make you a little loopy. I don't know. That's your call. I recommend good ventilation. But all I'm doing is applying an even coat, and I'm putting it all the way up to the line. Now, you want to let it set after you do this. You want to let it set for, to get tacky. You don't want it wet, and when you apply it, you really don't want thick spots. You want to spread it out so that it's an even coat. You can put 2 coats on if you want. I really don't think that it's necessary because everything's going to be stitched. This is really, it serves 2 purposes. It holds it in place for you while we're going to grind this after we get done laminating it. We're going to actually grind our edges and bevel them, or smooth them, and then we're going to locate where to put the holes. And this is just to hold everything together while you're doing it, because when you're done, the stitching is what's actually going to hold your leather. This just makes your assembly process much easier, and it does add stiffness if you're using a thinner leather. And even with a thicker leather, I love the thickness. When I'm doing like a cowboy rig for cowboy action shooting, some of the leading manufacturers out there actually insert thin steel in between the layers, and sometimes it's even exposed, and that's to hold its form. My cowboy rig I've had for probably 12 or 13 years, and it's smooth leather inside and out, and I don't have any steel in it, and I love it. Now, if I was to set a heavy bag of dog food or something on it, I probably wouldn't like it so well. But if that was the case, because it doesn't have steel in it, I can always re-wet it, reform it, and bring it back to life. I prefer not to. I do take care of my holsters, but my holsters are actually made out of my cowboy holsters. The outer is made out of the 10 ounce like this, and then it's lined with 5 ounce. So it's real thick leather. I like stiff leather for a holster. I like the definition, the fit, and I don't want to feel insecure about carrying it and having it not being held firmly. And thick leather to me is the way to go, and that's why I like the vegetable tan so well. But that doesn't mean that's what you have to use. We're trying to show you how to do things on a budget with what you got. Most of my life I've had a champagne taste on a beer budget, and that's why I learned to do so many of the things that I do. When I started doing pre-1840 living history reenacting, you couldn't buy supplies. And if you haven't seen our introduction video, what we're all about, I'll explain more of that in there. But that was really, poverty is the mother of innovation. And that's why I had to learn to do so many things that I do. And after I started doing them, I liked them and went on to do them further. That's why I actually do leather tooling and everything. And I do have specialized tools for that. And when we get to the later on in future series, when we start doing tooling, I'll actually show you how to make some of your tools. A lot of tools by wood carving, by leather working. I make a lot of my own tools. I can't afford to buy them, so we'll always try and keep you on a budget when we do this. I'll show you the tools that we use, but anyhow, I'm going to cut the video for a minute because it's going to take about 10 minutes for this to tack up, and then when we come back, I'll show you the next step.